Alright, people of the internet, we're back again with another review. Today we're going to be covering the T.Rex Arms AC 1.5. This will be a little bit quicker of a review.
This shouldn't take us very long.
He said with hopefully naive optimism, as it is basically an enhanced AC1, so a lot of things that pertain to the AC1 before kind of pertain to this. Anyways, let's get right into it. So, this is the front, rear, shoulder pads, and cummerbund package for the AC 1.5 that comes standard on the website when you buy it. I did not get one of the placards, partially because I think it's pretty obvious how they work, and partially because I already have Swift Clip placards that I'm going to be using anyway. So I guess that would be my first kind of, with this thing, is that I see what they were trying to do with the placards. It's an interesting idea. I'll come back to that a little bit later, but since most people these days are running some kind of Swift Clip or G-hook type placard, it seems like a little bit of a legacy throwback, especially considering this isn't actually compatible with the Cry ones. Anyways, I'm not entirely sure what they were going for with this, but it is nice to have an option to have a little bit more permanently attached front panel for this thing, if that's how you want to run this. Anyways, I didn't get one because I think it's very kind of obvious how it works, and also the one that I wanted to get, which is the new all-the-way one with the inserts and everything, for some reason wasn't available when I got this, because for some reason they weren't able to make it available when the plate carrier itself dropped, but whatever, maybe some other time. Moving on. So they've been kind of promoting this as a bit of a, how do I put this, like a AC1 upgrade for a bit more capability for a more broad range of uses, and then kind of stepping down to a dedicated slick carrier with AC 1.0. Which I think is a little bit of an odd choice, considering this thing is still perfectly good at being concealable if you want to use it like that. I'm not seeing, in the little bit of testing I've done with that, if you've seen reviews of other carriers on here, where I've got some pictures of wearing it concealed, this is basically the same as them. I mean, it's a it's a plate carrier that you're trying to conceal with plates in it. It's only going to get so good. And if you take the Swift Clip buckles off here, it works the same as all the other ones that I've reviewed. So I'm not really sure why they felt they needed to have a dedicated slick one when they could have just gone with this, but their company. So starting with the front of this thing, let me go ahead and get these Cummerbund out. They made a point on the, the demonstration video, of noting that they respect these Swift Clip webbing slots to have a G-hook slot in the middle of them. And they did mention that the Swift Clips were a little bit more difficult to get in and out, and they were not kidding about that. These things are, I won't say more difficult, damn near impossible to get in and out of here. So maybe that's why they offer the one that's made to be run slick, because they knew how frustrating this was going to be to try and get these in and out if you want to run it slick, or maybe that's why they went to this new kind of webbing, permanent, semi-permanent front placard design here, because they were like, if anyone takes these out, they're never going to want to put them back in. So, yeah, be warned. They're not kidding about that. Not a big deal. It's just frustrating and annoying. The Velcro piece up front, same as it was in the AC1, and I'm still going to gripe about it because I think it's underwhelming. As I've said in most of the other reviews for this type of carrier, especially for one like this, that they're specifically saying is their multi-role carrier, and they've put some more features into it so that it can kind of scale a little bit more effectively. Wimping out and not putting the classic, 4x2 webbing and Velcro grid up front here, so that you can put an EUD or ATAC or whatever, is criminal, and amazing that people in the year of our Lord 2024 keep overlooking this kind of almost becoming a requirement if you want a full-featured carrier. Anyways, this is their new grid for the placards, which yay, whatever. The big new feature here I'll go into is the front flap with the... Actually, I'll also say the front overflap that then goes over the what used to be the main piece of Velcro on the AC1 that you would attach your placards and cummerbunds to. What they've done now is added this extra little overflap with, as they've said, the intention of allowing you to attach side wings to this carrier without it getting all lumpy on the front, which is a problem when you start adding wings and you got your cummerbund going on top of it, and then sometimes, depending on the brand of wings you got, they're not the same size as the cummerbund Velcro, so then you've got either a bigger wing panel or a smaller wing panel, and the cummerbund is trying to go over that, and that's all stacked up weirdly, and then you've got to try and put your front flap or placard over the top of that, and as I've experienced myself, that does absolutely play a role in how well that placard will adhere to the Velcro, which can often lead to, if you're running, a pretty, loaded up and heavy placard, sometimes if you're moving in certain ways, bending over, crawling on things, etc., it can lead to constantly, kind of popping on and off the front. It's infuriating. So I get what they were doing with that, and I think it's a pretty good idea. This is, unfortunately, being the genius that I am, something that I did ding the Bees Aptum for in my previous review was having that extra front flap on the front that I said in that review wasn't needed, but I had forgotten that there are still people out there that use side wings, and it didn't occur to me at that point that this is something that would be useful for, so I kind of unfairly dinged it for that. And then when this came out, I was like, oh yeah, people still use those, because I've gone away from using them years ago and don't use them anymore, and completely forgot about them, specifically for the reasons that I just mentioned of it's just a complete clusterfuck stacking everything up on top of the, plate carrier. So, I stand corrected. It is useful to have an extra front flap on the front to deal with some of the issues that can arise from running side wings. I will say this, though, I will still ding the the Aptum for the fact that their front flap is, super thick, because it's got a lot of, extra material to it, whereas this one is kind of what I said back in the Aptum review of how they kind of should have done it is, one piece of Velcro on the front, one piece of Velcro on the bottom, and one piece of Cordura in the middle. That's all you need, and it works fine. There's, it's not going to, kill the durability to have one piece of Cordura. This stuff's pretty durable. Anyways, this is fine. This is more or less how I would have liked to see it executed elsewhere. However, the one thing I don't like about this is the fact that they folded the features of this extra front flap into the interior retention flap for the plate. Wow, you guys can't see that. Which then leads to a bit of an issue with attaching certain things underneath this front flap. So what can happen with this then is it's fine for attaching things to the sides, but if you want to attach something from the bottom, like for example, one of these Velcro tourniquet holders, you can't, because this flap is part of it. I'm not sure what happened with that. Even though the design of this carrier is around this sort of top half piece being a one-piece thing with this front flap, which is, nice and all, but, they could have, cut this here and then sewn a flap to, the interior bottom of this, kind of like they did with the AC1 and other carriers have done on the market, so I'm not sure how they missed that, but other than that, it more or less works as intended. On the rear, we've got the classic, just sort of slick back with the usual AC1 size styled piece of Velcro on the back. I'm one of those people who's in the market for a carrier that's a dedicated kind of like slick scalable, and I'm not going to be running anything on the back of the carrier anyway, so if you're not looking to run anything on the back of the carrier, you'll be happy with this. I also want to take a minute to talk about the actual plate bag design here. I very much like the way they've taken this sort of, well, if you can see that, kind of a one-piece, two-piece type design, where the front piece, well, I want to say top, the top piece is a one piece cut into the Velcro covering flaps on both the front and the rear of this. That's not only a very, I think, aesthetically pleasing design feature, but it's pretty smart, especially for the rear, because it really does help to contour over and smoothen the lumps,
my lovely little lumps,
of the cummerbunds that you're going to be attaching under here, especially if you're going to use, you know, an aftermarket cummerbund aside from this elastic one that comes with it. Some of them have a little bit chunkier Velcro areas at the rear because of either how they're assembled or how they're sewn, etc., so forth and so on. So not only does this help kind of smooth over that, but also there's no now like extra seam in the middle of the plate bag for where, like, you know, a traditional sewn-on flap would be attached normally, which is another thing that really does help if you're going to try to wear this concealed, to kind of, you know, help not only the plate bag flow over, you know, the cummerbund, but also to help your cover shirt flow over the rear of the plate and avoid as many hard edges and seams and bulges and shit as possible. It's might seem like something subtle and overlookable, but it is a very nice design feature. As far as the actual attachment area goes, it's the same, you know, one-piece rear flap that is also part of the plate retention flap. As far as the attachment area, the cummerbund is a 4.75 inch tall cummerbund, and the Velcro area is 5 3/4. So obviously, if you aren't a big fan of this elastic cummerbund, either because you just don't like elastic cummerbunds, or you don't like the features, or whatever, like I talk about later with it, this is now compatible with any other Velcro attachable cummerbund on the market that will fit in a 5 3/4 inch area. And of course, now it has a nice rear flap to sandwich everything in place and keep it on there. So this is all, you know, as I've griped about in some of my previous videos, this is excellent and exactly how a plate carrier like this should be working in order to not only maximize the compatibility with a variety of items that are on the market, but to ensure that the end user can scale it at the level that they want to. And having the ability to change cummerbunds is a huge part of that. The plate bag size for this is, as far as fitting into the actual plate bags itself, is pretty much the same as it was before. This carrier is very much sized precisely to the plate size you pick. Definitely refer to the chart to ensure that you can fit it, or do your research on the plate you're going to buy if they're not on the chart. However, I am running the medium Hesco 3810s, and they fit in here about exactly right. But versus the original AC1, which was very tight and fit them like a latex glove with no extra room in it. Whereas this one, it fits them perfectly, but I felt like I didn't have to like pound them into the thing to get them in there. I just slid them in and they fit perfectly. Maybe a little bit of sizing change on the plate bag, maybe because of the tweave, maybe it's Maybelline, who fucking knows. But either way, the plate sizing is still precise, but it is a little bit better than it was previously, in that it's just plain a little bit better fitting, a little easier to get the plate in and out, and it doesn't feel like it's straining the plate bags at the seams to get your plates in there. As far as the comfort goes, it's 3.6 Röntgen.
It's not great, but it's not horrifying.
I don't feel like I'm losing anything from the previous AC1 that had the little 3D mesh panel in the middle. I know a lot of people complained about that as basically like a shredding hazard where it would just get fucked up and didn't really do anything to cool you off and wasn't really thick enough to provide a whole lot of actual comfort padding, and I agree with all those assessments. This tweave middle, well, it's sure as hell not adding any extra comfort, and it's probably not adding any extra durability, but it's also not costing you any comfort or durability that wasn't already here. Given that given that these plate bags are so precisely sized, there really isn't room for it to expand to fit other plate sizes. So I don't really see why it's needed. this could have just been all Cordura, and it would have been just as effective considering how precisely these plate bags are sized. In fact, I kind of would have, again, one of my pet peeves that I've mentioned in previous reviews, I would have preferred them to get rid of the tweave, size the plate bags either as they are or just a tad bit more generously than they were previously, so that it's just easier to get your plates in and out. And then done the kind of what the bees did with the loop Velcro 2-inch strips, because then that would leave it up to the end user to be able to add extra items like either pontoon pads or like the ice vent type stuff to the back of this thing. So if they're going to wear it overt, then they could have extra air cooling and padding and stuff, and then when they want to wear it slick, they could just yank that off the Velcro and wear it slick. But you're also not losing anything from the previous AC1, so it's a wash. And while we're on the topic of comfort, let's go to the big elephant in the room and talk about the shoulder straps. So, if you already had an AC1, you know what I'm going to say, which means if you liked the AC1, you won't have a problem with this. If you did not like the AC1, you will have a problem with this. It's very simple. So anyways, what do I mean by that? The shoulder straps, when bare, are basically the exact same material that they were before, and when they are worn by themselves without the shoulder pad, they are really bad when they're bare. They are, in a strange way, somehow too thin and flexible. Basically, this gives it in a way that, again, it shouldn't differ between other plate carriers I've had that have just like a regular piece of webbing or some other kind of like laser cut material, etc., so forth. Like, you'd think it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but for some reason, there is just something about these straps, this material. I don't understand what it is. The helicarrier that I just reviewed that had, basically, two pieces of folded over Cordura as the shoulder straps was somehow more comfortable and better at carrying a load than these are. And I don't know how that's possible, but somehow it is. I am wearing a set of front and rear Hesco 3810 plates, which are 4 pounds flat apiece. And then to kind of play around with the placard while I was, LARPing in my living room, I had a Shaw placard with 4 empty magazines, a multi-tool, a tourniquet, and everything else is pretty much empty on here. That's all it was on the front of this thing, plus my whopping 8 pounds of plates, because I was just, fucking around in the living room with this thing, getting it adjusted and trying it on, and checking the fit. And like within 15 minutes of me wearing it, I was like,
I don't feel so good.
After half an hour, my shoulders were hurting. Now, I will admit, I am not the most amazingly fit person in the world. As far as body type styles, I have a sufficiently worm-like physique, similar to our Twink Lord himself. But I have also worn a lot of plate carriers. As I mentioned before on this channel, I've owned, I think, 25 plate carriers so far. All different designs and types of shoulder straps and different angles and shit. And so I'm pretty darn good at, figuring out what's comfortable and what isn't. Because I'm not like somebody with like roid level traps, you could probably take what I'm saying with a bit more validity, whereas if I'm saying it's comfortable, it's really comfortable, and if I'm saying it's not comfortable, it's really bad. And this is not comfortable. They also say that these shoulder straps have been upgraded with a 5-degree cant. It was pretty much the same as the previous AC1 and every other plate carrier I've owned that has straight shoulder straps. I have always had, an issue with shoulder straps on plate carriers that are straight. This has been something that's gone all the way back to like the Mayflower APC I got way back when I was just getting into this stuff, which has a, set of straps that cut very close to the neck. This is something I've had a problem with all the way back then and has persisted to this day. I guess I am just like super sensitive to straight shoulder straps. Am I gay? Gay! But anyways, The reason I point that out is because in the introduction video for this plate carrier that T.Rex Arms themselves released, they talk about how physique may play a role into how the plate carrier fits you. And he mentioned the fact that they put the extra 5-degree cant in here for people, who complained about the previous straight straps. And, as as he put it, people who might have, a bit more pronounced, traps. And no, that's not how it works. Because I am a person with a physique that's, very SpongeBob and very worm-like, very similar to Lucas himself. And I don't work with straight shoulder straps. They just do not fit me right, no matter what I do. So clearly it has nothing to do with, what your shoulder and neck shape is like. It has to do with the fact that straight straps on a plate carrier are just not comfortable. Apparently they've put a little bit of a cant into the shoulder straps. Yeah, okay, sure. I will say that with the 5% cant, it is approximately 5% more comfortable than the original AC1 was, and that's about it. If you want to see a proper angle to a shoulder strap, this is what that looks like. Note, proper angle of how it comes off. See, you can actually see that it matches with your actual body shape. Now kindly note here, the fact that it does not, it's infuriating. Actually, you know what, I'm gonna put a plate in there. Just so you can see that I'm not being crazy and making shit up. The fit of this is, here you can see, very good. As I mentioned before, the ability to get in and out slides much better. In and out of here now. So much easier to get the plates in here. Again, probably due to the tweave. Here you can see with a 3810 plate, it fits exactly. And this Velcro then also fits about exactly 1-to-1 on top of itself. So all that's good to go. Anyways, here we are with the plates in. And there you have it. There's the more or less still kind of straight angle that these have got. Maybe, under strain about that much of a difference. As you can see, there is a slight curve to them. And then here's a carrier. This is the Bees Aptum with, the obvious, much more pronounced, much more better angle to the shoulder straps, which is the correct angle that they should be at. And as you can see here, even though I've got mine pretty tightened up, because there is a bit of excess material here and excess material here that all takes up extra space, even though I've got mine pretty short because of this extra space, the way that these are angled still maintains a comfort level that I find much more tolerable than straight straps or nearly straight straps like you have here. And yet these shoulder straps, which are made of a very similar, it's a single piece of some sort of laser cut laminate and a piece of Velcro, so it's, it's not a whole lot different, yet somehow this is a lot more comfortable than these are. When I was retesting this carrier, spoiler alert, we're going to revisit this Bees Aptum soon, hopefully. When I was retesting this carrier out, I'm wearing it by itself with no shoulder pads, just like you see here, and with the same plates and the same Shaw placard with the magazines and stuff in it, like I just showed you. I wore this thing around the house for hours, and I was fine. Yes, the edges of this laminate can be a little bit abrasive, but since it doesn't, ride up super close to your neck, even as short as I've got these straps, it's not really noticeable. Somehow, it's still better at weight bearing than these are. And this also goes to what I just said about, like, the Haley plate carrier that I reviewed, even though I didn't like that. But it had a much better and more correct shoulder strap angle, even though the shoulder straps on there are 2 pieces of Cordura. Basically, the same, type of thickness and flexibility as the straps on here. But that was still more comfortable. It is very clear to me, at least, that the correct angle to the shoulder straps goes a long way towards making things comfortable that no amount of shoulder padding or structural stiffening or material types can ever solve. It is not going to matter, and I've seen people mention this about the AC1, and I'm like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You know, I've seen people talk about putting like the axle structural pads on this on the AC1 carriers I had before, and it not making a whole lot of difference. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to. Duh, you're throwing, you're throwing pearls before swine here, mate. So shoulder straps must be angled in order to be comfortable. Straight straps are dumb, and I hate them. I rest my case. If you are one of those people who find straight shoulder straps or nearly straight shoulder straps works well with your body type, you will be okay with this and it will be fine. If you do not like it, it's the same as the AC1 before it. You're going to find it uncomfortable and probably truly miserable after about half an hour of wearing it. Now, I will say, in closing, one minor thing, and that is taking into consideration the shoulder pads being used with it. As I'll talk about later, these shoulder pads are considerably better than the original AC1 shoulder pads, and they actually have some level of padding and how should I say, foam density to them, so that they actually kind of work like they're supposed to. If you wear this plate carrier with the pads, it is slightly better, because once you put the pads on, the amazing 5% extra cant that the shoulder straps have does become a little bit more, if not physically apparent, like perceptibly apparent, if that makes sense. It is slightly more comfortable to wear them, and you do start to feel that it is angling a little bit better over your shoulders, but that could also just be, the padding taking up the slack for the way the shoulder pads are already kind of not so great at doing that. So I would highly recommend that if you are going to wear this carrier, you're going to have to wear the pads with it. If you want to wear this carrier slick, like concealed, I mean, again, it's not terrible. The 5% cant is slightly better than the old AC1 was, but even with, a whopping 8 pounds of plates in this thing, you are going to feel it sooner rather than later, even if you're wearing it completely slick. The other thing that is also present on these new plate bags is a slot at the front here and at the rear. The one thing that is nice about this little, maybe it was intentional, maybe not, I'm not sure, side benefit is if you're going to run these straps shorter, instead of having this flap that just flaps flappily on the front of this thing, you can now tuck it into the interior of this little flap, and now it goes away. This is really useful, not only just to keep it from catching on shit, but also if you're going to wear it concealed, so you don't have, this potentially sticking out underneath your shirt and causing, shit poking out. It does help to kind of sort of contour over things a little bit. So whether or not that was intentional, it is a nice extra feature. All right, I think that's pretty much it for the main overall concept. Let me talk about the cummerbund for a little bit. So we'll just get one half of this because we don't need both. They're the same exact thing. Cummerbund, it's an elastic cummerbund, and it works like an elastic cummerbund with slots. There you go. That's all you need to know. Okay, so as far as the actual quality of this goes, it's very well done. This is definitely the good shit that you see on, the serious high-end carriers. It's very, very stiff, thick, elastic, and it is got quite a bit of, what do I call it? Resistance. Quite a bit of resistance to it, so it's very good. The stitching on it is perfect. This is a solid, from what I can tell, probably triple stitching in the middle of all these, which is as it should be. The ends here with the Velcro are double stitched at the ends twice, and then also double stitched at the end here, which is as good as it's going to get. There's actually some cummerbunds I've seen similar to this where either they don't double stitch any of this, or they double stitch it at the end here and then don't double stitch it anywhere else. And what I've found is if you don't at least double stitch the end here, this tends to kind of, under use, start to kind of pull apart. And this is something I've seen from even, higher end companies that are well-known combat grade brands. So it's nice to see they went a little bit of the extra mile here. Everything else is also double stitched, including these little pulls. These are double stitched on. These webbing areas I think are actually triple stitched on. So this thing is, I will say, actually a little bit overbuilt. Overbuilt for what you'd see on an elastic cummerbund generally. And that's great. Fine with me. It's about time somebody put the effort into something simple like an elastic cummerbund. Now, as far as the cummerbund itself, I mean, it's an elastic cummerbund like all the other cummerbunds on the market. So if you're expecting anything special out of this thing, you're not going to find it. It's, you know, if you've used an elastic cummerbund with cells interlinked, then you're familiar with how this works. And if you like how this works, then you'll be happy with it. If you don't like elastic cummerbunds, or you don't like elastic cummerbunds with cells interlinked, then this is going to be the same as all the others, and you're not going to like it. Simple as. It's nice to see that they put some retention tabs on here, but again, it's more down to the functionality of it than anything else. So it either works or it doesn't for you. They have added some interesting features with this, where it's got a little bit of an extra piece at the ends, and then they've divided up the middle into some extra spaces. I'm kind of 50-50 on this. It is nice to have a little bit of an extra space at the front here, so that when you're attaching the plate carrier to yourself, you've got a little bit of leeway to play with before you eat up space in your slots. I'm wondering if this is maybe just a little bit long. Maybe like half of it would have been about right. It's also not really a deal killer. Just my, pedantic preference. The rest of it, again, I'm just kind of about. These front pistol pockets are okay. I mean, you can put pistol-sized things in them, and it will fit. But this takes me right back to one of my gripes about when I was talking about pistol magazine pouches in general, and that is the way the magazines fit in them, the way they're retained, and how they're accessed. So if you're going to put something like a normal-sized, in fact, let me get one. So with like a 15-round mag here, which is a M&P mag, but it's about the same exact size as a Glock 19 mag, which is extremely common. If we're going to put this in here, it comes down to about here. So a Glock 17 mag would, fill it up about most of the way. But the caveat being, it's okay. Why? So either you leave it sort of sticking halfway up like this, which it's enough retention, but And here's the thing, there's nothing to stop the magazine from either working its way further up out of the pouch or sliding further down into the pouch, which, will then be stopped by the base plate, but now the magazine is all the way down in the pouch, base plate flush, and it's a real pain in the dick to actually try to draw this. You can say that you can use this shock cord retention tab here, but the problem with that is, unless you're running like, probably a 20 or 30 round magazine in this thing, it's not needed, because sure, you can, of course, you can set it shorter, right? Even if you put the magazine here or there, you can tighten it down, and it'll, keep it in there. How you'd get it out at that point is anyone's guess. But the catch with it is, if you were going to pull your short magazine out, which, most pistol magazines are 15 to 17 rounds. If you were going to do that, and then you were going to use this as any way to retain it, see my previous gripes on why I hate bungee retention for pistol magazines. It always just gets in the way. But also now you've got pressure. You've got pressure pushing down on top of the magazine in a pouch that doesn't fit it exactly. So it's going to slowly be, pushing it down into the pouch further than you already had it. So if you're like, oh, it needs to be up X amount so I can draw it correctly, and then you want to use the bungee retention and actually have it, retain the magazine, so it's got to have some tension on it, it's going to be pushing it slowly back in. It's not ideal. So, pistol pouches being a bit, fluky as they are, this is not an ideal pistol pouch. The good news is, this pocket can fit other useful things, like this tourniquet, which actually fits in here very well. And when I tried this on, and when it curves your body, it's actually not as big a deal sitting next to the magazine pouch as you'd think it might be. So you kind of can do something useful with it, but if your idea was to put like a multi-tool or a pistol magazine in here, I mean, if you put a multi-tool in here, it's going to go straight to the bottom of this thing, and you're never going to be able to get it out of there, at least not in any quick way, so yeah, don't do that. So at least you can fit something useful in these front slot pockets, but I don't find them useful for putting actual pistol magazines in, and I'm not sure if they were 100% intended to be that way. I don't remember entirely what T.Rex said in the video for this. I'd have to go back and watch it, but you can do it yourselves. My other gripe with this now is, now that you've got this sort of pistol pocket in the front, plus this extended bit of space here, which is basically 2 pistol pockets, you've now taken the rifle magazine pocket and bumped it back approximately a rifle magazine's worth of space. This is now in a place where, for me, it is neither comfortable nor fast to actually get to. I hate magazines jamming me in the armpits, and this is exactly what it does. At least how this Cummerbund fits on me. It puts that magazine right about at my 2:33 o'clock, and because of, obviously where you have your plates sitting if you're wearing them correctly, and the fact that this Cummerbund is, a certain size and so forth and so on, it now puts that magazine right up under your arm, which sucks, because not only is it uncomfortable, but it's trying to reach back and get it now, drawing it from out from underneath your armpit is not a not an efficient way to draw it, and is just not fast. It's actually pretty convoluted now. Again, some of this may depend on how it fits you, but I'm not down with it. This is something that I've found in elastic cummerbunds in the past, which is why I don't really use them at all anymore. And the ability for elastic cummerbunds to somehow get your magazines into spots where they are neither comfortable or fast to draw has been an across-the-board experience that I've had with pretty much all elastic cummerbunds. And this cummerbund here now excels at doing both of those really annoying and uncomfortable things. Which is funny because, as soon as I saw the AC1 come on the site, the literal first thought that went through my head was, so when can I buy the plate bags without the cummerbund? Because I neither use nor need an elastic cummerbund anymore. If you like elastic cummerbunds, again, this will be fine. If you hate elastic cummerbunds like I do, you can just and forget it exists. The good news is, as I pointed out earlier, this plate carrier has correctly sized Velcro in the front and rear, so you can attach pretty much any other cummerbund you want within the 5-inch size cummerbund range. So most 3-band cummerbunds on the market will fit. Before we go away too far, I'll just say a quick word about these shoulder pads. On top of what I mentioned earlier about the overall fit and comfort of this carrier, the shoulder pads are actually pretty darn good. They are considerably better than what the AC1 had, which, to be blunt, was the shoulder pads on that carrier came across as an afterthought, and they felt like it too. These are considerably better. The padding is much more effective. It's a little bit thicker, and it's a little bit, I won't say stiffer, but denser than they were originally. These are very good, and they remind me a lot of the classic Velocity Systems slip-over shoulder pads that I have on my other carrier, which have kind of been the only slip-over pads worthwhile on the market for quite a long time. These are real close, and I think it would actually be a great idea if T.Rex Arms would put these on the website and sell them separately from this carrier, because these would be well worth getting on their own. If they could put them out for let's say, $30 for a pair of these things, I think they'd sell like hotcakes by themselves. Anyways, moving on. Alright, so let's take a quick dive into the interior of the plate carrier. Overall, it's not too bad. It's pretty much, again, about exactly the same as the original AC1. Here we have the Velcro for the closure of the plate pocket. It's, as stated in the video, it's a nice big piece. I quite like this. Too many times I've seen plate carriers that have just a 2-inch strip at the bottom. Then when you get different size plates in there and the thickness differs and the amount of space that the plate takes up in the bag differs, then you run into issues with the Velcro losing purchase on itself, because then it's only got 2 inches, and then the, longer or shorter it gets. You end up with, like, if you have really thin plates in here, and then you have to tuck that flap in more, then you're, only got like half an inch of purchase at the bottom of the Velcro. So having a much bigger piece of Velcro in here is great, even though these carriers are sized in a way where they're pretty close to the size plate you're going to be putting in here. And there would be some difference, but not this much difference. So it's a nice gesture, even though it doesn't need it. And I wish more plate carriers that are a little more generously sized to fit different types of plates would kind of follow this a little bit more across the industry. Anyways, as far as the overall sewing goes, the quality is acceptable, and as I've mentioned in my previous reviews of all these sort of slick scalable carriers I've been doing on this channel, they're all pretty much kind of the same. It's not super amazing. None of these carriers have been what I've been, used to in the past with some of the more like duty rated carriers from like, Velocity Systems or First Spear or Eagle or something like that. So I've come to kind of not really expect that level of hyper attention to making sure it can't possibly ever come unsewn ever. As always, I'm kind of a little bit 50-50 on these, where the sewing on these is done well. It's tight, it's spaced correctly, there's not a whole lot of areas where I see like loose threads or anything, so it's acceptable. However, some of the areas are still kind of single-stitched, like, for example, the middle portion where this tweave stuff is sewn on here is just single-stitched down the sides, or at least as far as I can tell, it's single-stitched. Shoulder straps are box-stitched on here, doubled at the top, singled on the sides and middle. That's acceptable. It's much better than some of the other carriers I've seen where they basically just double-stitch it in at the top here, which is okay, but I'd rather have this. It's a little bit better. The Velcro on the shoulder straps is the same thing, doubled at the top and bottom, singled in the middle. Now, the nice thing about this carrier, too, is they did pay some attention to the stress points on this. At areas that they seem to have identified as stress points, it is bar tack. So here and here, there's bar tacking. At the connection of the top and bottom portion of the plate bags, it's either bar tacked or triple stitched, I'm not sure, but it's one of those two. And then at the bottom here, where you'd be, stretching this material between the tweave and the cordura, it is also bar tacked in those seam areas as well. So that's great. And then the hook Velcro here at the bottom is double stitched at the bottom and the top, and then single stitched in the rest of the areas. So more or less the same overall across the carrier. There's, they did a reasonably good job of identifying areas where the double stitching or bar tacking is actually going to count, and then everything else is single stitched. Again, it's not as amazing as some of the carriers of the past, but none of these current day slick scalable carriers have been. So within the realm of all the carriers that I've reviewed in the past that have been this type of slick scalable carrier, it is perfectly acceptable within that. And I'm not seeing anything like wrong with the stitching. It looks like this time around they made damn sure to actually get it right on the first release instead of what happened with like the AC1. So that's good to see that they've finally gotten that ironed out. It's about the same as the original AC1 once they got it fixed, plus a little bit better in some areas, I think. For all the people on Reddit going, they're good quality, it's fine. It's the same as everything else. Alright, so now we come to the final thought here that everyone's going to be asking about, that I seem to have, that seems to be the big hot topic across the internet since this thing got dropped, and that is it worth it? And yeah, I think that more or less it overall is, if you want what it's offering. As you've seen with this review, everything here, at least as far as quality goes, is on par with every other plate carrier in this genre. That is a, other US-made plate carrier. Sure, there's a couple areas maybe they could have gone a little bit of the extra mile on, but it's overall okay. And as I mentioned in the previous AC1 review, it's quite clear that a lot of people doing the pissing and moaning about it on the internet are people who seem to have more a bias against Lucas himself than they do either give a damn or knowledge about what the product is that they're complaining about. They're just out there to shit on T-Rex arms in any way they can, and shitting on their products is as good as it gets, especially when you're on the internet. Like, nerd, don't buy it because reasons, and I don't like them, so their products all suck. Like, really? They're the same as everywhere else. Like I said, yeah, sure, there's some things I would like to see done a little differently, maybe go a little bit harder on, some of the obsessive quality stuff that I like in some areas, but they're on par with everybody else as far as quality goes. As far as the price goes, at first glance, I can see why people are looking at this and going, oh, $250, why is it so expensive? But again, these people clearly don't understand the plate market, because this is on par with the price of every other plate carrier in the same genre that's with the similar features and this, same sewing quality and accessories, etc., so forth and so on. It's the same thing. And if you spec out other carriers to, do what this does, they all come out right around somewhere between, let's say 220 to 270, somewhere in there. I get a kick out of it. People saw the price and just freaked, but didn't actually think about what was included or what the thing did. For example, we can talk about, the previous helicarrier. That's a classic example of, it started out reasonable and got expensive fast. But if you look at the price point on that, it's basically the same as this, which is a little high, but not insane until you start trying to make it scalable. Whereas this one at least does the correct, stuff that I complained about in the Haley review of it has all the features that make it compatible with items that most people already own. So, the value is there, even though it's a little bit more expensive initially. The other thing that people aren't noticing is the design features and some of the accessories that this thing comes with. I think it would behoove most people that were, kind of ragging on the price of this to think about, what it actually includes versus, the plate carrier that their pet ideal is holding up in, contrast to this one, and that they're saying is so much better, or you could get one of these for this much money. It was kind of like, when the when the AC 1.0 dropped, or no, the AC 0, whatever the hell, the slick one that they have now. And people were like, oh, I don't see the purpose of that. This is dumb. Lol, T-Rex is stupid. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't really have a use for that. But they forgot that other companies, like specifically Defense Mechanisms, has been selling. In fact, I actually think Bees sells one too. Both of them have been selling basically the exact same thing for years, and I never saw anyone run off to the internet to complain about how dumb of an idea it was. And then T-Rex Arms comes out with something that's the same thing. They're like, it's stupid. What would anyone use that for? Like, okay, really? do you even understand what's on the market that you're complaining about? Because it's the same shit. Same thing with this thing. People saw this and went, $250, it's so expensive. Like, okay, but for the plate carriers you're going to compare it with and say, oh, I could have this instead, what are the features? Does it have, the front panel's worth of features that this does? Does it have a rear flap? Because most of the carriers that people are comparing this to don't have one, and that's kind of important. Shit, I'm starting to sound like Biden. Does it include shoulder pads? And are the shoulder pads it includes any good? Because this one does that. Again, I'm not trying to crap on anyone's stuff, but like, for example, there was a plate carrier just came out by Agilite. It's $180. It doesn't have a rear flap to cover the cummerbund up because, again, you may have a differing opinion on this, but my opinion is that that is a requirement to, keep your cummerbund on there and also to help conceal things if you're going to wear it concealed. But more importantly, to keep it on there so that it doesn't get yoinked off by, going through a doorway or getting out of a car or, lifting a backpack off your back or sliding it onto your back. It's stuff that can catch on things and just yank things off of stuff. Even for a slit carrier, my personal opinion is that you need to have a rear flap, and that one doesn't have one. It has a rear G-hook attached flap that costs an extra $40. So if you want a simple feature like a rear flap to hold your cummerbund on, it's going to cost you $40 more. So if you take the $180 that carrier costs and add that on, you're now at $220. That carrier also does not include any sort of shoulder pads, which at minimum you're looking at another $30. So once you add those two features back on in order to get it to do the same thing this does, you're now at $250. This is something that if you take the time to go through all of the plate carriers just that I've reviewed on this channel, just follow them out and build them out in a way that matches the capability of this. Just this much. Go build them out to match this, and then come back and tell me where you end up on price. Because I'm going to bet you $1 it's probably pretty close to what this is. Or so I've found over the last several years of digging through the slick scalable plate carrier market. All roads kind of lead to somewhere between $200 to $275. So, with that out of the way, is it worth it? Yes and no. Quality, it's okay. The features are good features. They've whiffed a little bit on a couple things like this front flap. And I don't like the new cummerbund, but again, that's kind of me. You know, the shoulder straps are still uncomfortable. But if this is one of those things that for you does not make a difference, and you're sitting here going, yeah, this is fine, this does exactly what I want, or this will not be an issue for me down the road, I don't see any reason not to buy it. Especially, you know, if you're able to get one on sale or maybe secondhand from somebody who didn't like theirs and you can pay a little less for it. Is it as good as some other carriers in the market? Well, no. This one kind of hits right about in the middle. It's pretty good. As always, so much of this boils down to user preference. In a market where, unfortunately, we can't just custom order our dream gear items that we would want, we're kind of having to be at the mercy of, you know, what other people or other companies that have, you know, marketability put out for us to use. So it's a simple case of, you know, if this fits what you need, then it's fine. And at the price point, you're not paying such an exorbitant amount of money more than anything else in similar carriers on the market. It'd be like me saying this thing has bad weight bearing capability compared to, I don't know, the Cry AVS I used to have. I mean, that'd be hilarious, right? You'd think I was a moron. If I was like, yeah, I love the AVS, it's the best weight bearing carrier ever, and this thing doesn't hold a candle to it. Well, no shit. Not a whole lot of plate carriers on the market that can. You know, so that's the thing I've seen is a lot of people kind of comparing their problems with something like this to other carriers that haven't got anything to do with it. Or are basically the same thing. And then if they, you know, built them out the same way, would cost the same amount of money within $20. I don't get it. But anyways, it's otherwise okay. If you like it, it will be okay. If you don't like it, that's okay too. I don't like it either because it's just not comfortable for me to wear for more than half an hour, and I'm not going to suffer like that. Other than that, it's fine. Put your little fucking Redditor personal bias in your pocket and drive on. If you don't like, you know, the way that Lucas's personality is, I mean, oh no, what will we do? Like, we don't like your personality. You're annoying and abrasive and won't stop complaining about things you don't like, so go away. It's just also tiresome.